On this episode of That One Movie Podcast, we are going to review Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla Kong, Godzilla times Kong,
Godzilla kisses Kong,
Godzilla X Kong, the new Empire, which is the new Godzilla and King Kong movie that came out, but mostly King Kong.
Yes.
And we'll talk all about it. Spoiler-free review first, then we'll dive into spoilers, of course. That will all be time-coded down in the description. Use the time codes in the description to jump straight to that review. We're also going to talk about Jodorowsky's Dune movie, a Dune movie in the 1970s. Very ambitious, never was made. The whole documentary behind that you can watch on Max. All right, if you have that streaming service, we'll talk about all that stuff because we're just doing the Dune gauntlet lately.
Yes,
all right, we got
final
Dune
one.
Part 2. We got 1984 Dune. We got Jodorowsky's Dune. Will we ever do the miniseries Dune?
Maybe.
We're working our way towards it. Lots of fun there. But beforehand, again, use the time codes down in the description. But beforehand, we are going to talk about some of the news from this week in the world of entertainment. Holden, what are some of our top stories this week?
So we're going to talk about trailers for Kinds of Kindness and The Sympathizer, as well as talk about that Alex Garland apparently might be retiring from directing. And Star Trek 4 might finally happen, but who knows?
Who knows, Holden? Can't wait to talk about that new Yorgos Lanthimos movie, Kinds of Kindness. Mm-hmm. Nice. Sweet. Again, any of those topics sound interesting to you, use the time codes down in the description or stick around, hang out with us for an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it ends up being. Be a good time. I'm Jimmy Youthy.
I'm Holden Sutter.
And it's time for Tomp.
Tomp.
That One Movie Podcast.
Tomp.
All right, Jimmy, before we talk about Godzilla X Kong or Jodorowsky's Dune, let's do the Toms.
Checks notes. Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about this week's news in the world of entertainment.
The Toms.
Toms is the rapid fire segment in which we rate the news of the week in the world of entertainment on a scale of 3 famous Toms: Brokaw, Bombadil, and Bergeron. Brokaw's the highest, Bombadil's the lowest, Bergeron is somewhere in between.
Flawless.
Jimmy, let's get to it.
Yes, let's start off with trailers, Kinds of Kindness. Yorgos Lanthimos, he's back.
He's back already.
Wow.
We talked about a couple weeks ago that he had filmed a movie during post-production of I said Past Lives, but Poor Things. Yeah, and this is that movie. Once again, Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe are both in it, alongside Jesse Plemons and some others.
3 of the greatest living actors.
Yes. Not very long. It's literally like under a minute trailer. But
very much a teaser.
Yeah, very much. It does give, I think, a good sense of the tone. It seems more, I guess, modern setting than a lot of his other movies.
Normal?
Yeah, more normal, but it's probably not. Seems to have some crime elements maybe, but who really knows? Very interesting vibes with the trailer at the very least. That's mostly what you get from it, I think.
Yeah, there's no story, nothing. Holden's mom wants to know if he's alive. Yes, he's alive, Darla.
Yes, I'm here.
For now. Stay tuned to the end of the podcast.
Yeah, you can keep talking about it while I respond to her.
Keep her in suspense, Holden. Tell her, hey, listen to the pod and you'll find out if I made it or not. All right, but no, Yorgos Lanthimos, obviously we love the goofy, crazy stuff he does. You know, Poor Things was one of our favorite movies of last year, deserving of all the Oscars that it won. I have no idea what to think of this because they didn't show anything, which is what a teaser trailer should do. Gets me excited. June 12th or something, at least a limited release. So I'm looking forward to it. Of course, my guy Yorgos, I got to give him a Brokaw.
Yeah, I got to give it a Brokaw too, because for what little they show, I think it's still a pretty captivating trailer. Once again, mostly just the vibes, playing Sweet Dreams in the background. Good stuff.
I was going to say, it's kind of like Spielberg, Schindler's List, Jurassic Park, back to back. Which is this his Jurassic Park or Schindler's List, do you think? Or what's Poor Things?
Yeah, but the other trailer this week is for The Sympathizer, which is a show that I had as my dark horse on my top 10 anticipated shows of the year, which is kind of the reason I wanted to talk about it. It's partially directed and co-written by Park Chan-wook of Old Boy and The Handmaiden, which I recently watched. A lot of other movies as well. And yeah, this one seems a lot lighter in tone than those in some regards. It's a miniseries on HBO, to clarify. But it seems to be about this man. I don't know if it's based on a true story. It's at least based on a novel. This man who I think is originally from Vietnam, who's acting as a spy for the U.S., but also is acting as a spy for Vietnam.
Seems goofy. It's the Mac or whatever his name is in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Is a double agent.
Yeah, and it's I assume there's going to be a lot of conflict about where his true allegiances lie, but just based in, maybe he'll go back and forth on that or whatever. Robert Downey Jr. is in this playing several different roles.
He is really? The trailer only said it like 6 times.
Yeah. Well, they're playing up on the fact that he's apparently playing like 5 or 6 different characters. So, which is interesting. But what do you think of the trailer, Jimmy?
It looks like it could be good. Is this miniseries, I'm guessing?
Yeah, miniseries.
This is a wait to see if it's good and hope it's good. Kind of a Shogun thing for me. Like, I'll wait to hear if it's good. I'm hoping it's good. Fingers crossed. Looks like a fun idea. And apparently Shogun is very good. So
yeah, and it's coming out very soon in like a couple weeks, I think. So we don't have long to wait to see if it's good. I think the trailer's tone is fun. It seems kind of goofy, but also I'm sure there's gonna be plenty of serious stuff in it too. I think the setting is cool, like end of Vietnam War era. Seems like Robert Downey Jr. is just hamming it up for the show, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, I think it's a good trailer. Solid trailer. I'll give it a Brokaw.
That's what I'm holding up. Brokaws all around. Enough trailer talk, Holden. Let's talk about something else.
Yeah. So this was kind of a surprise a couple days ago. Jimmy messaged it, or sent it to me, and that's how I found out. But Chance Perdomo, I believe is how you say his name, unfortunately passed away very young. He's the reason we're bringing him up because Perdomo.
Yeah, I don't know where you got Perdomo.
Oh, I don't know where I got it from. Evidently, I didn't copy paste this one. It was probably from memory. Perdomo. Anyway, he was on Gen V, playing Andre Anderson in that show, one of the lead roles. But yeah, he's 27, died in a motorcycle accident. But he's also, that's kind of his most recent big role, also well known for a big role on The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which I've never seen.
Apparently very good in that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this stinks. These guys was a fantastic in Gen V.
Yeah.
I mean, that show was just getting going. He was basically the lead role in that. Well, just like, man, I mean, it just goes to show, like, doesn't matter who you are, your life hangs in the balance at all times. But just absolutely stinks. Just, man, like, just heart goes out to his family, loved ones, everyone close to him, and just, I just can't imagine like working with someone like that and then they're just gone. Like when they see him when they're like ascending. But yeah, I mean, just really sad. For him and then like the ramifications, just like even for the stuff he was involved in, it's like, Gen V, I'm sure they have to go back and figure out what they're going to do, if they're going to recast or just write him out, because they had some things where they could do that. Obviously that's not as important as holy smokes, this guy's just not even alive anymore. Holy moly. So I just hate this. I hate it. And just a motorcycle accident. I mean, it reminds you of like Anton Yelchin from Star Trek, and Paul Walker, and just like
just all these freak accidents of young up and coming actors.
Just, I don't want it to happen anymore. I'm gonna give it a Bombadil. I'm gonna give his performance in The Boys, which is the one thing I've seen him in, a Brokaw, because I thought he was very good.
Yeah, so, the accident, Bombadil, him in life, or at least as an actor, Brokaw. So cool.
So I am just, that's just really stinks. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. You just, I mean, you sent it to me and you're like, what the hell? Or whatever. Like,
what the heck? Like, just like, this isn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Like, he's, you're Chadwick Boseman. It's like, that wasn't supposed to happen. It's this is not part of the plan, and just makes you reflect on mortality, the fragility of life.
Yep. But in other news, Jimmy, new Jurassic World movie coming out.
Wow.
What a transition, right? New Jurassic World movie.
Holden, you are the glue that keeps this podcast together. That's
Absolutely.
for sure.
Scarlett Johansson is apparently in talks to star in this. So what do you think of that?
Well, for my favorite shade of red, first off.
Scarlet?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know what scarlet red necessarily looks like.
You know, it's like a red orange.
Okay.
Is how I would describe it as a colorblind person.
Okay.
I'm kind of an expert on colors. Yeah, Scarlett Johansson, great, awesome, cool. Jurassic World, great, awesome, cool.
Gareth
Can't
Edwards.
wait. Gareth Edwards, great, awesome, cool. I almost started watching The Creator today,
Okay.
but I didn't.
Yeah.
So
had to work.
Bergeron, I don't know. I need to see a teaser for this thing before I feel anything.
Well, it seems like they're fast tracking it, so it's coming out next year.
So it's
probably
gotta
won't
be good.
that long. Yeah, right. They're wasting no time.
Is this coming out next year?
I think so.
What
I
a
think it's like
horrible
I
idea.
think it's like the same month as Superman Legacy or something, or now just Superman.
Wow,
Interesting.
that's next year.
Yeah, 2025.
Whenever these dates are announced, it seems so far into the future. It's like Star Wars Episode 9 is going to come out in 2019. Oh, that date's never going to happen.
No,
Here we are in 2024, Holden.
Well, in the case of Avatar, it never does happen.
Yeah.
It seems so far in the future, then it just keeps.
When
getting
the heck
pushed
is
back.
Avatar 3 coming out?
No
Do they
idea.
even have a release date?
I think
Wasn't
it
that
actually,
gonna
I
be
think
like
it might
this-
be next year. I think it's 2025 currently.
What year did the 2 come out? I don't even. How long ago was that?
2022?
So it should be coming out this year, right? But it's not.
I don't know. I feel
Weren't
like
they
it
gonna
got
do
delayed
every
a year.
other year? Star Wars. The problem is it's Disney now, and I don't know when anything's coming out.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Jurassic World. Bergeron.
We got off on more interesting movies. So this was interesting, especially since his new movie is just about to come out. Alex Garland is apparently retiring from directing.
Yeah, I read this article.
He's planning on returning to screenwriting, so he's not completely leaving Hollywood, but just going back to screenwriting movies.
He listened to our review of Men, and he just said, "Wow,
Yeah,
those
wow.
guys pointed out how bad this movie is."
Yeah, gosh, really disheartened him.
Yeah.
But so he does not plan on returning to directing anytime soon, but he doesn't completely close off that possibility. Seems to be just kind of like getting like tired of it, like exhausted.
So I read the article, and he talks about just like the weight of directing and how much responsibility it is. And
Sure.
he just doesn't like that. He doesn't
Yeah.
like bearing all that responsibility. Which that's when I'm like, why do people like to direct? I'm like, it sounds just awful. I just remember watching Babylon in the theaters, Damien Chazelle. I'm like, this must have just been the like 3 worst months of this guy's life
Oh my
directing
God,
this
yeah.
movie. I'm like, is he in director's jail or does he just not want to do it anymore? I'm
Maybe
like, is he
goes
just
back to
burned out?
screenwriting.
So Alex Garland's screenwriting, obviously, he's almost as famous. He's probably more famous as a screenwriter than he is a director anyway.
I haven't seen Devs or whatever, but I save for Ex Machina, I prefer what I've seen, like him as a screenwriter, because I like Sunshine.
Exclusively, because he wrote those movies too.
Yeah. But I like Sunshine. I like Dread. Dread was really good. And 28 Days Later was pretty good from what I remember. So yeah, I mean, personally, I think his strengths lied in his earlier part of his career. So I wonder if this will kind of maybe, I don't know, help him return back to that. I don't know. I know a lot of people really like Annihilation, and some people really like Men. Who knows about Civil War? But Devs is apparently good. Haven't seen it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see about Civil War.
Who knows?
This movie that it's his last direction. I mean, it probably is a hard movie to direct, and he wrote Civil War right before he wrote Men. He wrote them both kind of during the pandemic.
Okay, interesting.
I think he started writing Civil War before the pandemic. But yeah, no, I think it's like good on him for identifying that and not letting people pressure him into doing something he doesn't want to do. He certainly probably has enough money and enough clout at this point.
I mean,
where he can just write stuff. He's got a good relationship with Danny Boyle. He said he has an idea for a 28 Days Later trilogy. So I don't know if that includes 28 Days Later, and then it's 28 years later, and then one more movie, or if it another trilogy starting at 28 years later.
Yeah,
so.
well, that makes sense why, because I remember when like they were first announcing that happening, Alex Garland was attached. I don't know if we had talked about it, but in my mind, I was like, oh, it seems kind of strange that he's returning to just writing that instead of like wanting to direct it or something. But with this coming out, that makes sense that he wants to go back to writing, and I'm sure he has a good relationship with Danny Boyle. So, yeah.
28 years later, what is it about? George R. R. Martin finally finishing The Winds of Winter. Am I right? Oh man, where's the air horn on this thing?
Classic.
I don't think. Do I have one?
You could just. Oh, there it is.
Where's
there.
that? Oh, there we go. Yeah, there you go.
Well timed.
There we go. Got it off. We could not hear that. Only you could hear that.
Yeah, maybe it's really loud. Jimmy
I hope
might
it
have
is.
To, yeah, Jimmy might have to edit it down. Who knows?
Emily will be upset with me. She does not like air horn sound effects. So.
Oh, okay.
You know what I think of that, Emily? Take that.
Anyway, yeah, Alex Garland retiring. I mean, I guess like from the perspective of like it doesn't seem like he's being forced out or anything. He's choosing to do it. So Broca, I guess. Sure. Good for him. If this is like what he wants to do, cool. Yeah.
I love Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Hands down his best movie.
Oh yeah.
People like Sunshine. People like 28 Days Later. I don't think it's close. Men was bad.
You need to watch
one
Dredd.
really missed.
Dredd's pretty good.
Did he write Dredd?
Yeah, he wrote Dredd.
I've never seen Dredd, yeah. So, good on you, Alex Garland. Can't wait to see this movie. That's probably fine.
Yes.
Civil War.
Anyway, next up, Scream 7.
7.
Yeah.
I won't do the joke anymore.
So apparently returning, Courtney Cox is in talks to return. Who would have thought? And I wrote down here, I could have sworn she died in 6. But apparently she didn't.
See, that's why I'm telling you, Olin, 6 is not very good because I don't remember anything about it. I still remember the end of 5 better than the end of 6.
I remember the end of 6, and I remember certain parts throughout that movie. Like I remember the intro. The intro was pretty good to 6.
Pretty good. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the middle chunk I don't remember. I remember she gets like attacked in her apartment or whatever, and then I thought she died, but I guess not. I don't remember.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
We probably complained about how she should have died and then didn't.
Yeah,
we may have even compared it to like Rise of Skywalker or something.
Yeah, that could be.
Somebody check the tape.
Yeah, roll it back. Hey, Jimmy, insert our conversation into this episode.
No, I'm not.
Roll it back.
Another legacy character coming back. Boy, great. Awesome. I'm at a Bergeron for this movie. That's not going to be any good.
Yep.
I will be surprised if this movie's good. It'll be fine. I bet they'll make it fine. And then they will quit making them for a while again.
Yep. That would make sense to me. Yeah, I'll give it Bergeron. Whatever. And then the final piece, Star Trek 4 is apparently actually happening right now. Maybe. Who knows? Because this gets like announced and canceled every year. Steve Yockey, who apparently worked on HBO's The Flight Attendant, which I've heard is pretty decent, is attached as screenwriter. Variety says that it's intended to be the final film of the Chris Pine reboot series, which makes sense because probably that whole cast just
wants it to be 10 years.
Just wants it to be done.
It's been 10 years.
Yeah.
I would just assumed it was going to be new already a reboot.
Yeah, if this gets I feel like every time this gets canceled, I'm like, okay, they're probably just going to reboot it. But then it comes back and it's like, no, they're still doing it. They're still doing Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto and all of them.
I need to rewatch those. Mm-hmm. Are they any good?
Yeah,
probably not as good as I like.
We're the only people that like Into Darkness, right?
Yeah,
but it's also been so long.
I loved that movie when it came out.
Yeah, I've only seen it once.
13 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. Jeez.
So,
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I like the cast. I think it's a very good cast for the Enterprise and everything. And I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan, but I enjoyed those movies well enough. I remember enjoying all 3, but I've also only seen all 3 once. So all of my memories of them are very vague.
Yeah.
So
set your phasers to Bergeron. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm at, in the middle.
Yeah, I'm kind of at a Bergeron too. Excited for it to an extent, but also it's Star Trek. So
yeah. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
There you go. That's enough news, Holden.
That is.
Just bumped the microphone.
What do we have to say about Popeyes this week in
What
our
do we have to say about
TOMPeyes segment.
You had to wait a long time for your food. Oh, man, I'm telling you, man, doing the mobile ordering is where it is at.
It probably is, but I feel like if I start doing mobile ordering, that we're gonna have even less to say.
Well, maybe it's the end of
experience.
TOMPeyes. Maybe it needs to just be a bit when it's a bit. You
Well,
know what I'm saying?
Here's the thing. I think the Popeyes we go to now is just less interesting.
It is.
Overall, which is weird because when I've DoorDashed there, this Popeyes is a train wreck. So like, I feel like they just don't have mobile ordering down, but maybe like in store is fine. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, for me, they were like very busy. It looked like they only had like 3 or 4 people working. But also at the same time, I didn't think they were that busy. I don't think there was like a line in the drive-through. So, I mean, I don't know what the story was.
I had like one big order or something.
That could be it. But yeah, I had to wait like 20 minutes probably to order. There were several other people there waiting as well. Jimmy had to wait a while to even get someone's attention to get his order picked up and everything.
But then they had it pretty much immediately. From
Yeah, my order was done within a few minutes, I'd say. It was very good, very tasty
good.
this week.
Oh yeah.
I'd say maybe the biscuit was maybe a tad undercooked this time. If I had to be picky. It was a little too like, I love a fluffy biscuit, but it felt like it was a little underbaked. But otherwise, it was fantastic. Good stuff.
So maybe TOMPeyes. Maybe this is the TOMPeyes hiatus. Maybe we've inundated. We've pulled a Marvel, Holden. We've pulled Disney, Star Wars.
No promises either way.
We're Rogue Squadron of TOMPeyes coming out next week for you.
Maybe.
Will it come out? Will it happen? Who knows?
Yeah. Whatever.
TOMPeyes will be back when we have something to say.
It'll be back.
It'll be back.
We love Popeyes.
Popeyes will giveth once again.
Popeyes, we go every week. Something's bound to happen. So,
And something did happen for such an extended run. TOMPeyes, the dynasty, maybe on a little bit of a break, but
we'll see.
the Yankees will return.
Thanos will return.
They are inevitable.
Yes. With that, though, Jimmy, let's move on to our first movie review of the week. Godzilla Cross Kong, The New Empire.
Yes.
All right. Godzilla X Kong, Cross Kong, Godzilla Kong, whatever you want to call it. The New Empire. Here we are with our non-spoiler review. What should we say about it? Yeah, synopsis.
There's a Hollow Earth within Hollow Earth, Holden.
Yes. Well, yeah. So it's
That's all you need to know. If you were like, that's it, that's all I needed to hear, go for it. Go see this movie. If
Kong's.
that doesn't mean anything to you, maybe not for you.
Yeah. It's more Godzilla Kong. I mean, it is a sequel. Kong's in Hollow Earth, hanging out. Godzilla's on the surface hanging out. They don't meet because they'd fight or something.
Don't keep them separated.
Keep them separated.
Lock them into different areas.
Put Godzilla in the Coliseum.
Godzilla naps in the Coliseum. He sleeps. It's his
funny.
dog bed.
It's pretty funny.
I wrote that down as a note to make sure I talk about it. And he returns to it at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's so good.
Like,
it's a good bit.
finally done. Gotta go
rest in the Coliseum. Gotta swim all the way from Rio to the Coliseum.
Yeah. That can't be comfy.
No.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
it's
think
like it's
so.
not flat.
No. I don't know. There has to be like comfier land masses to lay on than just in the middle of Rome. But
Gotta be, right? And he's
would
got to
think
like
so.
it's not like on like near the water.
no. Yeah. I've never been to Rome, but I assume the Colosseum's a little ways inland. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
What's going on? What are you doing? Stupid Godzilla.
Stupid Godzilla. Anyway, this movie, speaking of stupid, this movie is very stupid, but it's fun. It's fun.
Did I convince you that this is a good movie?
I don't think so, but I
mean, it's not a good
okay,
movie, but it's a good movie, if you know what I mean.
The movie is fun. It has a lot of fun things in it. I don't know exactly where I stand on it. I'll probably be thinking throughout this review and like solidify my rating at the end of it.
I'm going to convince you that
it's going to be an active change here. We'll see. Yeah, I left the movie thinking it was like on par with the last one. And in many ways, I still think that because I think there are aspects that this movie does way worse than that one, but I also think it's a lot more stupid fun than that one. So I don't know. We'll see. You can convince me, Jimmy.
Here's my pitch. First off, going into, I just dreaded this
did.
gauntlet
And
of,
every time
of
we saw
Ghostbusters and Godzilla.
Every time you saw the trailer, you just kind of groaned
I was
a
like,
little
oh
bit.
gosh. 2014 Godzilla was good. I liked
remember
it
being fine. I think I've only seen it once.
I only saw it once. It was 10 years ago.
I think I've only seen all of these once. All of these months. And I have seen all 5 now. I have seen all of them, but I think it's only once each.
I surprisingly liked Kong Skull Island. Again, only saw that once randomly. I don't even know why I went to that movie. I didn't really want to see it. I went with my dad.
Yeah.
I don't think my dad really wanted to see it. How did we end up? I was like, that was actually all right.
King of the
Monsters horrible.
That's the worst one.
Way too long. Is that the one where it's like Fenway Park at the end or something? I think so.
That's the one where like Ghidorah comes out of a volcano and then there's the cross, the Jesus cross, like in the foreground. It's like symbolism.
Yeah,
Jimmy.
Symbolism.
So weird.
Just way too long. I love Charles Dance.
Yeah,
but way too long. Charles Dance, environmental radicalist, though, funny, hilarious. Godzilla versus Kong. Is that just what it's called?
Godzilla versus Kong.
Gee whiz, these movies. Godzilla versus Kong. Fight sequences incredible. Rest of the movie awful, just unwatchable. This movie, just they listened. They leaned into it.
Yes,
they reduced the human stuff significantly. And the human stuff that was in here was beyond stupid to the point that it was hilarious. And I think that's why if it was just more generic like it was in the other movies, like this one, it was so dumb that it was funny. And there were actually some characters that were kind of fun to watch that made it like tolerable, and they just minimized the human parts significantly. And you now actually had extended sequences with the monsters, especially like this is Kong's movie. Like if you're going to see Godzilla, this is Kong's movie.
The last movie was Kong's movie too. I think the director clearly has a preference because I think he writes it too, or at least co-writes it. So I think there's a preference, which is fine. Kong's fun enough monster to follow.
But extended sequences where there's just no talking at all, it's just monsters, and they just need to go 100% there now. Like you've gotten this far, go 100% there. The other thing that's going for this movie is like every 10 minutes there's a monster fight. Like they had like a timer going off at the editor, and like, oh, it's been 10 minutes and we haven't had a monster fight. So back in it, let's go. Is it even really necessary? No, let's just make the plot convoluted so we have to have, Godzilla, here's Godzilla. Godzilla's gonna go kill some Arctic thing.
Yeah, so I think the thing I'm hung up on is there are funny, stupid human moments in here, but I don't think it's like enough of that chunk of the movie, because I think a lot of the human stuff is just boring bad for me personally. And I don't really have much more to say about it than that, other than like the few notable moments I did enjoy, but most of it I was just like, let's just move past this. I don't need this here. It's like, and I do commend the movie for cutting down on it even more than they did in Godzilla versus Kong and everything, putting more monster stuff in it. But it's still there and it's still bad. Like cut down on it and then make it more interesting, the little bit you have or something. I don't know. Like if you insist on having human stuff in there, no matter how much you cut it down, it still needs to be something a bit more than what it is, because it's just, it's kind of nothing. There are some very funny lines. One of the lines that I had in the back of my brain was the submarine commander. Submarine Commander has like 5 lines in the movie, and they're all funny. But the one that I think is very funny is, if Godzilla defeats Tiamat, he'll become supercharged. Or whatever. It's just like dumb. There are some very funny lines like that in here, but unfortunately, I just don't think it's like enough. Like the ratio is not there for me to fully enjoy the human stuff. So
that's understandable. And I agree with you. They just need to cut it out completely. See, for me, it's hilarious because it's like some culture inside of Hollow Earth, which is so stupid. I mean, it's just like, I love it. It's hilarious to me. I think it's just so bizarre and weird. And the fact that there's a Hollow Earth within Hollow Earth.
That's the most fun part is the Hollow Earth culture thing out of the human stuff.
Fantastic. I think the characters were a little bit more fun. When it wasn't trying to be emotional. There are a couple times where it's like, okay, now the little girl and King Kong again, they're gonna do the thing again, and I'm like, okay, I don't need to see this. But again, it was not drawn out. They just would go back to it. Now, okay, we interrupt this programming to give you Godzilla killing this monster. All right, there we go. Or King Kong punches another monkey. Here we go.
Yeah.
The plot makes zero sense. I don't even know like what was driving the action to this really at all. They're like, this girl had sensing something or that. I don't know. The lore in this movie makes zero sense. They're like, they go to this Hollow Earth civilization, like worships these different what do they call them? Titans?
Yeah, Titans.
And doesn't make any sense. They're like, we're going to predict this thing absolutely perfectly that's about to happen, and Kong needs to be involved, and who cares? I mean, they're slamming each other into the Great Pyramids, Holden.
So this might sound like hypocritical based on what I say about other movies, but I love when things are like not explained and it's embraced, but there are a few things in this movie that I'm just like, it is so vague. I'm like, even for a movie like this, I just need a little more. I need a little bit more here.
See, I think they gave too much. Just
Okay.
like, I don't care. It seemed very weird how they got from point A to point B. I don't care. It was just,
which that doesn't bother me too much.
This is the epitome of a shut your brain off and just eat some popcorn and enjoy it. And if you are like, well, in movies, movies should make you think about things, and they should be about something. All right, well,
this movie is about nothing, really, which is fine.
When the ghost of Leonard Bernstein inhabits me, this movie better be about something. Who loves Snoopy in the vestibule? Who loves Snoopy in the vestibule? What's he doing there? Making fun of Bradley Cooper.
Yes.
If that's you, this movie's not for you. Like, if you're like, cinema. If you use the word cinema and you're not British, this movie's not for you. This movie is fun. My expectations were so low. I just was dreading this, and I had such a fun time. I think the action in this movie is great.
Yeah, well directed.
Besides, like, I think the one like action sequence that doesn't really work is like the main one. I think it's kind of like the worst one, but still, I'm like, who cares? This is kind of fun and silly. It's just so silly. They leaned into it, and I think the movie's so much better for it. And did they quite figure it out? No, they didn't. But they trimmed it so it was under 2 hours. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, Godzilla just wraps up and takes a nap in the Coliseum. So,
yeah, I do admire their confidence with the visual effects too, because so much of this is done during the day, like set during the day. Which, yeah, I mean, when you have big movies like this, so much of it is at night. King of the Monsters, worst example of it. Just cannot see what's happening like during the climax of that movie.
Lots of really good simulations here. One thing that it's really hard, and I'm not sure if they completely pulled it off, is like scaling particle systems, like whether it's like there's a bunch of sand or water, specifically like when King Kong is like taking a shower in the waterfall, and it's like it's hard to replicate that scale because it's just so big that things have to be moving slowly. And I heard this complaint from other people, like Hollow Earth, it's hard to tell the scale a little bit more. I do think I
was thinking that too.
I do think they did a pretty good job. And I mean, this movie has so many VFX shots. I cannot even begin to imagine the VFX budget.
Yeah. I mean, like half the movie is basically just an animated movie. Like, with nothing against it, but like
it looks incredible though. Yeah. They really did a good job.
So the budget for this, I think, is lower than the last one. Actually, I think it's like 130 million. Which for the most part, it looks pretty good. There are some parts where it looks a little iffy, which is kind of what I was getting to earlier about it being set during the day. I admire the confidence. I think it works for the most part. There were a few points I'm like, yeah, this doesn't look the best, but it's not flawless.
It looks pretty stinking good, I think.
It looks pretty good overall. But yeah, the scale, the kind of the size of the creatures in Hollow Earth was a complaint I had, just because there were certain parts where like you'd get a good sense of like, oh, those are some tiny trees down there and everything. But yeah, it's when you just have a bunch of apes hanging around each other, it's like, oh, they just kind of look like normal size apes. And they're just in these, I mean, literally like huge mines or whatever they're hanging out in. But us, it just looks like a normal mine that they're working in or something. It's like the scale there in Hollow Earth is a little off for me, but otherwise it looks pretty good.
Yeah, you almost have to have like the waterfall or just some sort of liquid or sand or dirt or something to give it that perspective.
I don't know how true this is, but I saw a few people say it online that apparently like the little baby Kong in this is how big King Kong was in Kong Skull Island. Because they say that he's like not, in that movie, he's like not fully grown. And there was like a whole big deal like behind the scenes about they needed to make him bigger to like square up against Godzilla. So apparently that's the case. I don't know how true that is, but interesting if true.
I don't know. This movie feels like a kid playing with toys.
It does.
Having a good time. And again, just mindless, fun action. That's what I like about it. It's just something silly is going on in all the fights. They always have something to them. It's good, like storytelling in the action. It's not just like Michael Bay Transformers, just blobs. Nothing's really what's even going on here. It's like fun, beat each other up, different powers, different things going on with the different titans and monsters, and just a good, fun monster movie, Holden.
I think more so than any of the other MonsterVerse movies, it's really inspired by the 60s Godzilla movies, because it is, you have the titans, they're kind of doing their own thing, and then they fight, and then there might be a reason why they stop fighting that's kind of silly, and then the humans are like nothing, and they're literally just expositing and explaining what the titans are doing. And that's, I mean, and they're even pulling like wrestling moves, like like the people in the rubber suits would do or something. Like it is very inspired by those movies, I think. So,
and you get to see Godzilla and King Kong team up. I mean, come on.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. I don't know what else to tell you, Olin. This movie is really fun. I'd sign up for another one.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see more. I think if they lean more into the stuff that really works in this movie, it'd be great. This movie's doing incredible. It's insane. I didn't think there was any hype behind this movie at all from what I was seeing online. But this movie has already earned more than its budget back. It's at like 200 million opening weekend.
Wow.
Which I think is the biggest opening weekend of the year so far. Obviously, this is probably very big. I just bumped the mic, so that probably sounded bad. It's very big overseas, I assume, but seems to be getting pretty positive reception here from a lot of audiences as well. So, yeah. If I were to give it I guess, are we doing ratings? Should we do that?
Yeah, go for your rating, Holden.
Rating?
Do it.
Oh gosh, I don't know what to give it. I still hadn't like landed on something. Maybe like a 7. I got like a 7.
That's pretty good.
10.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I probably came in. I probably came in at like a 6.
Holden,
Talking about it a bit more,
the first thing you did when we walked out of the theater, you turned to me and you said that was bad. So
I think I said it was not very good.
No, you
specifically
said that was bad.
I still think it is bad, but like
you just gave it a 7 out of 10, Holden.
But
you
it's
said
entertaining.
Your average movie is 5 out of 10, and you just gave it a 7 out of 10.
Okay, I'm not the most consistent. I'll admit that, but I think like I don't know. It's like it is very enjoyable, and I think I'm being kind of devil's advocate here, pointing out a lot of the nitpicks I have with it since you're so positive on it. But it is enjoyable. It's fun. I don't think it's a very good movie, like just as is. I think there's a lot of things you can nitpick about it, and I think that I was doing that earlier. But yeah, I don't know. If I were to go sit down and think about how much I enjoyed this movie, I'd probably go 7, maybe.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
I defended myself.
I convinced you that it's good.
I don't think you convinced me.
I think I won. I got you to give it a 7 out of 10. So
sure.
I'm going to take it. I thought you were going to be like 4 out of 10.
No, I probably when I walked out of this movie, I was probably at like a 5.5. If I'm looking back, like I
your
think
story is getting. You just said 6. Your story.
No, I came in today at a 6. Walking out of the movie is even a little bit lower. I've sat on it; it's gone up over time. I think I gave, and I said after the movie, I gave it was about the same as Godzilla versus Kong for me. I think I gave that movie about a 5.5, maybe a 6. So I have moved up from that. I do think it's a bit more enjoyable than that movie, at least.
So you're saying I convinced you it was good. I'm glad we can agree with that.
We're not.
I'm glad we can agree on that. I'm going to say that who's this movie for? Again, if you can turn your brain off and enjoy a silly movie that just leans into it, this is for you. If you cannot do that, if you're looking for cinema with a capital C for Christopher Nolan, this is not going to be for you. I think that's pretty straightforward. Again, I was highly skeptical, but I can enjoy a movie for what it is. And I thought this was pretty fun. Godzilla takes a nap in the Coliseum. I mean, seriously, what else do you need to say about this movie?
Good.
Kong gets his iron fist thing.
Oh, one thing
His Infinity Gauntlet.
One thing I'll say before we move on to non-spoilers, because I always forget to say it, or on to spoilers, because I always forget to say it until the very end. I do think the score for this movie is kind of bad.
I don't remember.
For me personally, it's like it leans really into 80s synthwave stuff, and it just does not fit the tone of the movie. It was so weird when it popped up. I was like, why is this like? Pick something different. Like you could even just make it more generic. I was like, why is this the score? I don't know. Weird. So anyway,
you going up to 7.5?
No.
All right. Well, now it's time for Jimmy X Holden spoilers for Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. There we go. Spoiler time. Right after this little jingle. Stick around if you've seen the movie.
All right. Godzilla X Kong. Spoilers, Jimmy.
Let's talk about the best part of the movie, which of course is when King Kong uses little Diddy Kong as just a weapon. Yeah. Just smacks other
picks them
monkeys.
Up, smacks monkeys with them. And then like the next shot, Spartan kicks a monkey into a chasm. Good stuff there. Very good fight.
That is high quality content.
That's cinema. That is cinema.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, no, I mean the fights you could describe like all of them. They're all with the exception of I think my one criticism with the fights is I think any Godzilla solo fight just feels like they kind of brush over it like in the first half of the movie. It feels like it's like you could have done more with this. Like when it fights Tiamat or whatever, it's just like underwater. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool, little underwater fight. And then he just uses the atomic breath and he's like in the Tiamat's in pieces. I'm like, okay, well, could have been cool to be a bit more there. But otherwise, I mean, I think pretty much all of the Kong fights are good. I mean, even the opening scene where he's running away from those big wolf things or whatever, that's fun.
Rips one in half and pours its guts over his head.
Yeah. You know, when I was talking about the effects looking iffy, you were talking about scaling too. I think like anytime there was like weird green blood, it looked really fake. That was like where I thought it looked the worst, was anytime there was like just weird goopy particle stuff like that.
See, no, that's exactly how Hollow Earth of goopy blood's supposed to look, Holden.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that was fun.
They did they did the dad trope with King Kong.
They did.
They made him Joel and the Mandalorian and all the other, and Kratos. They did the dad thing with King Kong.
One thing I'll say about that I think is genuinely maybe a little step above how some movies do it is like the little Kong is just a jerk and just like actively tries to kill Kong for like the first half of their relationship. And it's through those like kind of like him kind of learning to respect Kong through Kong's like fights and coming out on top and everything and being kind to little Diddy Kong and everything. So I think like that's kind of fun, plays into the more their animalistic nature a bit instead of it literally just being like, oh, this little Kong's wounded and little King Kong takes him in and just nurses him back to health and everything. And they go on a little journey. They're just kind to each other or whatever. Yeah, I liked that. It was fun.
It's just a little ungrateful turd for the first act of the movie.
Yeah, yes.
It's like King Kong's like, you want to eat this?
Which that's another thing that I think like ties into that 60s Godzilla stuff, because in those movies they like introduce like little mini Godzilla, and he's always the worst part of those movies. He's always just annoying, and it's mostly just there for like kids and stuff. But I think like they actually did the little kids stuff in this pretty well. So kid monster.
Lots of cool weapons in this. King Kong has Thor's axe.
Yeah, whatever, the Stormbreaker.
The bad guy's got the cool whip
That's
thing
a cool
that
whip.
also controls the Ice Godzilla.
Yeah, I can't remember. So the bad guy's name is the Scar King. I cannot remember what the Ice Godzilla's name. Just call it Ice Godzilla.
Ice Godzilla.
That's fine.
He rides Ice Godzilla.
Ice Godzilla. Ice Godzilla was cool. I feel like Ice Godzilla had the least cool, like in terms of like fighting, I'd say, because it was mostly just like shooting a beam of ice out of its mouth. Like it didn't really feel like they did much with it. Granted, unlike Godzilla, you know, it's running around on all fours and everything, but it was still cool. A little Ice Godzilla, creative. I think both of these villains are like original to this. I don't think they're from anything else. The Scar King and Ice Godzilla.
You mean Bad King Kong and Ice Godzilla?
Yeah,
very original.
Well, yeah, but I don't think they're from like an old movie or anything.
Genius. Hey guys, how about we have King Kong, but he's a bad guy.
So the might seem silly, I'm criticizing this, but I do not understand these villains in this movie. What are they trying to do?
I don't know. They're trying to destroy the world.
Yeah, it's like so they had this backstory where they go to this temple and they're like, oh, the Scar King, you know, fought Godzilla, and I mean, there's established history between the Kongs and the Godzillas, but this one was extra bad, and Godzilla almost died or something. But then like they go to the Kong, and then the Scar King's minion sees that there's a way up onto the surface, and then there's like, oh, let's go to the surface. I don't know. It's so I don't. You know, I understand like they're monsters. They don't talk. It's going to be hard to explain. They're not going to have like a super complex motivation, but I need like a motivation. I don't. It's bizarre.
No, you don't. Motivations.
Just like even if it's literally just destroy the humans or something. Like we don't even get that. Like there's like nothing. He's just bad.
Yeah, that's all you need to know. Bad King Kong.
Yeah,
I like how the rest of the apes are like the Urukai.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I was actually thinking that
like,
too.
Mark off their faces.
Yeah.
But when they were in the cave, all I was thinking of like was just the or whatever what's the well, gosh, I'm blanking on the Lord of the Rings, just Urukai theme, the orcs.
I wouldn't know.
Just like
Lord
lots of
hater.
percussion, and I can't. I'm blanking off the top.
But no,
of my
I
head.
was thinking that same thing. Like visually, it reminded me a lot of that. So
waiting for Saruman to start shouting out commands.
I did. I mean, not to backtrack too much, but I did like the Scar King as a presence was fun. I liked that he was like a lankier, like more agile ape, and that was kind of where he stood toe to toe. He had the whip and everything.
He wasn't bigger than King Kong. Like I was expecting him to just be bigger, and he just wasn't.
No, if anything, he was a little smaller, especially muscular and the muscles and everything. But no, and he had the charisma, I guess. He had a little bit of attitude and everything. It was kind of fun, but Mothra's in this too.
Yep.
Which was interesting. It was weird because like Mothra was in the King of the Monsters or whatever.
Yep.
And it dies. And Mothra in the old movies is like well known for just dying and coming back all the time. Like it constantly sacrifices itself. That's just like what it does.
Okay.
But in this movie, I felt it was weird because they like never really acknowledged that there was a Mothra before. It was just they're like, oh yeah, Mothra's prophesized to come through this or
Don't
whatever.
worry about it.
bizarre. But it was fun.
Only you can wake Mothra, but only after climbing up 1,000 stairs.
And the scariest looking steps I've ever seen in my life. I was
There
like, I
is
would
not a handrail. That is not ADA approved.
and it was like pure crystal too. I'm like, you're probably gonna, and it looked like shiny. I'm like, you could slip on that probably. I don't know. Like it just seemed like it would have a little slip to it.
Ace Ventura would have had a heck of a time. Everybody loves a slinky. Gotta have a slinky. Just going down that thing. My goodness. Holy smokes.
I was thinking that too. But yeah, the little girl, I think I keep making comparisons to the old movies. In the 60s movies, I don't know about the later ones, but Mothra has like these little fairy companions that are like these they're usually like twins. And they're just these two women that are there to essentially as like Mothra's proxy. And they just explain Mothra's motivation. That's like what they do. And they're very bizarre. They're just like weird magical alien beings. And I got the sense that the little girl was like the modern like answer to that to an extent. So yes, if that was a reference, cool. But
I never knew you had so much Godzilla lore just in the background.
I've seen like I would say the first half of like the original era of the Godzilla movies over time. So when Godzilla versus Kong came out, I was like, I should start watching some of these. And slowly since then, I've probably only watched like 6 or 7 or something, but I have kind of a vague idea of some of the others too. I've just been watching them occasionally, and a lot of them are not the most exciting, which is why I'm not like binging them or anything. I'm not like constantly, but it's just kind of when I'm like, they're pretty short. So I'm like, if I've just got 90 minutes and I don't know what to watch, I might put one on. So
yeah, but you could watch a Saw movie instead.
I could do that.
Hold on. There's a fight at the pyramids.
Yes. It was pretty fun.
It was
a fun fight. I like them just completely demolishing the pyramids.
Yeah, no respect for ancient human history. I tell you what. I like the idea though that there's a hollow earth portal right there. It's like kind of like, oh, see, the Egyptians, they were on to something here.
Yeah,
they knew the power of this place. They were probably in hollow earth. Those ancient Egyptians.
That's like an interesting thing, but then it's like not. The other ones just seem to be random places, like just randomly strewn about.
No, they're thinking. Okay?
They're thinking.
You don't think about it, all right? I of course nitpicked that they said Cairo, Egypt when they showed the Great Pyramids. I went, well, actually, Olin, it's Giza, not Gaza.
Not Gaza, Giza.
Giza. Right outside of Cairo. Okay, won't lower it down. Okay, I don't want to talk holding down to a 6.5 here with some of these nitpicks, but that was fun. Wow, so many people die in this movie.
Oh yeah.
I love when one of them, I can't even remember who it is. Probably the Scar King just like wraps his whip or something around like the top part of a building and just chucks it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like that. There goes a couple hundred people.
Oh yeah, no, that fight at the end in Rio is just like no one had the chance to evacuate. They're just in the midst of the city. So, and Rio, from what I know, is a pretty condensed city. A lot of like big population for the size. So there's just so many people they're crushing constantly. I wanted to mention before you get off the Egypt fight, the wrestling move that Godzilla uses on Kong to just like tosses him, like throws him back. It's so funny. That was the best part of that fight. There's a whole zero gravity fight in the Hollow Earth, which is funny because that's the entire reason they mention there's a gravity thing in there, which I don't think was explained very well. That's one of the things I'm like, why are the pyramids colliding doing this? What is this? I don't get this. It didn't make much sense to me. But apparently when those pyramid things collide, the gravity goes off.
See, you just didn't get it.
I just didn't get it.
Just didn't get it.
But then the zero gravity fight scene was a lot of fun.
I thought it was pretty incomprehensible what was happening. But I'm like, this is silly. They literally wrote this whole movie just to have this sequence.
Oh yeah, no, that's that's the entire reason they go there. That's the entire reason they even mentioned the gravity of the area. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
I thought the Rio was not a good place to have a big fight. There was just like oh, here's Christ the Redeemer, all right, and then there's a beach, and then nothing happens.
I think they literally just did it because it's like that doesn't happen. Like, and I think there's a reason for that because it's not the most exciting place to have a big fight. But it's like, oh, we don't. There's not really a movie that's many movies that have a big fight in Rio.
See, Hong Kong was way cooler.
Yeah, Hong Kong was way cooler. Had a very cool visual style to it. But yeah, this one it was just I mean, there were some cool things that happened in the fight. I like the wombo combo that they used to finish off the Scar King, where they literally just juggle him in the air, like fighting game style. Pretty good.
Shatter him into 1,000 pieces.
Yeah, that probably kill people.
Yeah.
Getting crushed by a chunk of the Scar King.
That's what I love. Is there not like, oh my gosh, the ramifications of this. We got to pass some legislation to stop Godzilla. That's not in this movie at all. Hopefully they don't do it in the next movie. Just ignore it. I don't care.
I was thinking on the way here, I'm like, I feel like that's the logical place they're going to go, and it's just not going to be very interesting. But
we need to take Godzilla and shoot him off to Mars.
Put him somewhere else.
I want alien invaders coming.
Well,
Godzilla stops
Jimmy,
him.
there's a lot of aliens in the Godzilla lore. There's actually there's a Godzilla villain literally called Space Godzilla.
Space Godzilla.
So bring in Space God, and Space Godzilla actually has a very cool design. So, and I think he's kind of a fan favorite in terms of at least the design. So could be something in the near future. We'll see.
I like Godzilla and Kong teaming up.
Yeah, good stuff. They're a good combo. I like the fact that they kind of just hate each other. For the most part, I like Godzilla just like killing the monsters on the surface. Whenever one surfaces, he's just he's just like the police on there, I guess, or whatever, taking them down. But yeah, and then Kong's in Hollow Earth and everything. And I like that dynamic. And then I like that when they have their fight, and then like as another comparison to the old movies, Mothra comes, and Mothra is always the voice of reason in those movies, and it usually convinces Godzilla and whatever monster he's fighting, like, you guys should work together to fight this bigger evil, and that's exactly what Mothra does here. So, yeah.
I think it's funny how much you know about those movies.
I know.
Some of the people stuff. I like Ace Ventura, vet detective, the veterinarian in this one. He was funny. There's that part where that tree kills the guy when he's like, there's nothing to worry about here. We're going to go forward. I'm definitely not going to die in the middle of the sentence.
Yeah, just an alive tree.
I called Mothra Mon Mothma in my notes.
Nice.
I can remember so many stairs talked about that Rio de Janeiro. Oh, here's a good part. When Godzilla just jumps off the, what is that? Gibraltar or something.
Yeah.
Does just like a swan.
Oh, that was good. Yeah, that's right.
I just started laughing. There were a couple moments where I just started laughing. Riding Godzilla, of course, is great. I appreciate what the Rap said in their review. They said, when Godzilla X's Kong, whatever the hell that means, everybody wins.
Yeah, this is true. I wasn't really sold on kind of the main, aside from like the girl was fine, but they have Rebecca Hall's character, Dan Stevens is the Ace Ventura guy, and then Brian Tyree Henry's the podcast guy. Especially Rebecca Hall and the podcast guy. I was like, I do not like these characters like at all. Rebecca Hall was just boring, like mom character, adopted mother. She thinks that the daughter's going to leave her for the tribe or whatever. And, she's not going to.
Hug Holden.
Yeah, they hug. Brian Tyree Henry's character. I love him as an actor. He's great on Atlanta. He's hilarious on Atlanta. But I thought he was excruciatingly annoying in this movie. I was like, I didn't think any line he said was funny at all. And I kind of remember that about the previous movie too. I remember him being maybe the weakest human character, but Dan Stevens was fine. He was at least an interesting presence, like as a Titan veterinarian guy, whatever he is. It's interesting if silly concept. We should mention, and we haven't mentioned yet the robot fist that Kong gets. And it's just in Hollow Earth. It's just down there. They're like, there's I can't remember what it's called, but like, oh yeah, this project, it's the funding was shut down, but luckily it was completed. And it's just down here in Hollow Earth.
Yep.
And they just go and get it.
Yep.
That's the big part where it's like they just teleport basically. How does Dan Stevens' character get to this place unless it's just somehow super close by? The place looks destroyed. Where does he get the ship from and does all this?
Don't worry about it, Alden. It's like Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. They're just starting to melt brass or whatever and put it into their proton packs.
That specific plot point doesn't bother me because I think it's very funny, but it is just something like, why is it like this? Very stupid. I'm trying to think.
I've exhausted my notes, Holden. I just
was there a fight we missed?
More to say. I have nothing more to say about this spectacular movie.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the little sea serpent thing that Kong just kills.
Yeah, that was good. They eat it. I think I brought up with Godzilla versus Kong too. I do like their like random creature designs for Hollow Earth for the most part. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like mind-blowing creativity or anything, but it's also not just generic stuff. There's some creative stuff there. There's those weird like electric birds here, which also, remember when Dan Stevens just brings a flock of those in? So stupid. But there's those, there's like the weird wolf things. There's the sea monster. Yeah. Some cool monster designs, I think, here.
And the light, because I was like, where does the light come from in Hollow Earth? It's like crystals.
Oh yeah. I think that might have been in the last
I'm
movie
sure it
too.
was.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I couldn't remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Fun if stupid and kind of bad movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly what I needed it to be.
Yeah.
Again, like the biggest thing they fixed was there's just a monster fight every 10 minutes. Like that was the biggest thing they needed to fix, and they fixed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there we go. I don't know if the fights were necessarily as good as Godzilla versus Kong, but everything outside of it and just the number of fights in general and the overall pacing, I think was just vastly improved.
Yeah. Yeah. It did not drag at all.
So there we go. That's Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire. Can't wait to talk about the next one they make after this. But right now, Holden, we need to talk about the documentary, Jodorowsky's Dune, the big, very ambitious project to bring Dune to the big screen in the 1970s. We're going to talk about the Max documentary of it. We're not the Max documentary. The documentary on Max
right now
that you can stream. Watch that, and we'll kind of just share our reactions. I don't know if we'll necessarily review it, but just kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
So I would say this is going to be like a spoiler discussion for them. So just if you're interested in Dune, just watch it, and then join us for this next segment, because this is now going to be our spoiler discussion about the stuff they talk about in Jodorowsky's Dune.
All right. Jodorowsky's Dune. It's directed by Frank Pavich, which from what I can tell, it's like one of the only movies he's ever made, which is very interesting. Is this the first documentary we've done ever?
What a great question.
I was thinking about that. I was trying to think if we have done a documentary before.
I have no idea.
Well, it seems like it. So maybe whatever we did before.
I've never seen the documentary.
You know
before.
what? We did American Movie. Technically, that's a documentary.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. Anyway, what do you think of this, Jimmy?
I just think it's incredible that Alejandro Jodorowsky literally created a whole movie in everything but the actual movie.
Yeah,
he literally did the whole thing is meticulously storyboarded. All the concepts are like created.
If you were to have
everybody is like cast.
Yeah,
the music is in place. They have all the people hired, and they just did everything except literally make the movie.
Yeah, yeah. That is true.
That's the remarkable thing.
If you were in, it's kind of mentioned at the beginning of the movie with the director Nicholas Winding Refn, who did Drive. The movie kind of starts out with him talking about he went to Jodorowsky's house several years ago, and he essentially he calls it watching the movie because he just looked through the entire like storyboard book that he owns. which is just, as you said, meticulously detailed and everything. And it is like the biggest book you've ever seen in your life. Like it looks like it's kind of rectangular. It looks like in the way that like a coffee table book is, I'd say, but it's just way bigger.
Yeah.
Like that'd be quite a coffee table book.
Yes.
But it is interesting that like theoretically,
literally like 8 inches thick.
yeah, at least
probably.
I'd say.
And like
It's pretty long.
14 inches
Yeah.
long, and then like another like 8 inches wide. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like a massive. And then it's like all the concept arts in there. Like what is like 6-9 storyboards per page, something like that.
So if you were to own this book somehow, even though there's only a few left in the world,
well, apparently every major studio had a copy at some point.
Yeah.
because they gave it to each one.
yeah, I think Wikipedia said when I was looking at it earlier, it said there's like 20, or there were 20 that were made, but it says only a handful of copies are known to remain. So, but somehow, if you were to get your hands on one, you theoretically could watch this movie, or at least understand what it was supposed to be. I think the documentary is really interesting. It has obviously Jodorowsky himself is quite a character.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And is kind of the driving force for why this documentary is so entertaining. I do think the movie or the documentary makes quite a few assumptions. I think quite a few leaps, especially in the last third, that I'm like, I don't really necessarily know if this needed to be in here. And I feel like it kind of just makes it feel less like a recount and less factual than it was. And I think the last third,
what?
I guess it is
It's
spoilers. Yeah.
so you can just get into it.
I think when it's talking about the influence on movies, there's several of those. I'm like, yeah, it's like, really? Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, they make the point that, as you said, every studio had this, so I'm sure there's some leaking in there, and especially when you have like Alien, which had a lot of the creatives on this into it.
Like that makes sense because it's like literally the creative team just went to another movie.
But like in this documentary, you have like they're drawing visual parallels between concept art or storyboards of this unmade movie that seem like a lot of them seem incredibly generic.
Yeah.
Some of them seem more direct than others, and I could see it, but a lot of them are just incredibly generic. And then it shows a clip from some movie. I'm like,
see, Flash Gordon copied everything from Dune.
Well, actually, Flash Gordon, out of all of them, I was like, I could like visually that movie looks crazy enough that maybe there's some crossover there. But then you have like Raiders of the Lost Ark, some of that stuff. I was like, I don't know. The Matrix. I mean, I don't know. It was very, I don't know. And I also feel like what this documentary lacks is like a dissenting opinion on this stuff. I feel like you have everyone in this movie saying how like insane and great it would be if it was made and how all the ideas are flawless. And you don't really have anyone like that wouldn't work. That's or even just someone that's like, that's as an adaptation that doesn't work. Like you don't really have any like negative voices here.
No.
Which I think is, you know, you need that devil's advocate for something like this. Otherwise, though, very interesting and informative, I think. And just insane to hear the story of like all of these people that went on to have different careers and whatnot, or had a lot big careers beforehand being brought together for this Avengers, like weird mishmash of artists and whatnot.
Well, I mean, the believability of it. I think Jodorowsky is a very unreliable narrator.
True,
he seems like someone who just makes up his own version of this. I don't even think he's trying to twist it. It's like, this is how he perceived it. So therefore, this is the truth.
A good example of that is he has like 3 different times where he like goes to a place and the person he wants to talk to just happens to be there.
Yeah.
Like that happens with Salvador Dali when he's at that hotel. That happens with I'm trying to remember who else it was. Orson Welles.
Well,
and there was one more
but
towards
he's
the
like,
beginning.
Orson Welles. He's a fat guy. Where does he like to eat in Paris?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll find him at this restaurant.
I think the other one was the comic illustrator towards the beginning of the movie.
Happened to be like meeting with his
agent
or something.
Yeah.
Like
so
that.
it's like there's no way all of this coincidence probably happened in this way. I mean, obviously he did meet with them at some point, I'm sure, but yeah. So there is a bit of unreliability there. It still is. I mean, he's very good at painting, at least, telling a very interesting story, and at least painting a very interesting set of sequence of events.
I also just don't think they could have made this movie. Especially his opening shot. I'm like, you could not have made that in 1975.
No. So ahead of its time in so many ways. I don't think it would ever happen, but he has that comment at the end where it's like, you could make this as like an animated movie nowadays. I'm like, that could be interesting. Like if someone wanted to attempt that nowadays, I'd be all for it. I don't think it would ever happen, but it'd be pretty cool.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
From what they show in the documentary, I don't think it's a very good adaptation of Dune. I'm like, it kind of misses the whole point of the book. I mean, Paul Atreides is just clearly a hero, almost like a Spartacus like ending where everybody's like, I'm Muad'Dib or I'm Paul or whatever they say.
Well, and he spends part of this towards the end of this. He criticizes David Lynch's Dune, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's another parallel between those two movies. Is that's a movie where Paul is unabashedly the hero, and for how much more bizarre this one is, and maybe more thematically complex with how long it is and how strange of a filmmaker he is. Yeah, he's still just like a hero ultimately, despite that not being the case in the novel and it being more nuanced.
Yeah. There are some interesting changes that they just like talked about, like Duke Leto being castrated by a bull, and then like Lady Jessica like taking the blood and like putting it in or semen into the blood,
turning the blood into semen and then like impregnating herself with it, which was so weird.
Such a bizarre idea. Well, and then like you have a whole scene where Peter de Vries, who is the Baron's Mentat, the Harkonnen's Mentat, played by David Dastmalchian
in the new ones.
He like just completely tortures to death Leto and like cuts off all his limbs.
Yeah,
and, there's allusions to him having all those torture devices, but they don't do that in the book at all. And in fact, like the Baron is like, he's like kind of terrified of like treating Duke Leto poorly because he's like me. Like, he identifies, he's like, that's my position. So if bad things can happen to them, that means they can happen to me. And so he's like, I need to treat him like kind of well and make sure that, this is very much like by the book, and like I still am gonna kill him, but like I don't want to like torture him or anything because and Peter's like, oh, come on, let's so yeah, that was an interesting kind of take. I do like the whole like idea of like the shot going in and all these different sequences. I wonder how long it would have been. Is there any idea?
Oh, the movie?
Yeah.
It seems to be 14 hours.
14?
That's what I've seen. Well, so they in the documentary, I don't think they say it in there, but they say it could be anywhere from like 5 to 20. I think the producer guy says that. But where was I seeing that? I've seen the 14 hours. Here we go. Jodorowsky felt 10 to 14 hours would be more appropriate for the adaptation. And I feel like there's other places I've seen that number said.
14. Well,
14 hours.
How do you get? And they kind of bring this question up at the very, very end. Like, how do you get that far into developing a movie without like having a greenlit?
Yeah, right.
They're like, why would you spend so much time on something that clearly will never be made? Like, they're like, yeah, like you guys thought it all through, and like this is the most affordable you could make this movie. Other than like having Salvador Dali play the Emperor of the Universe for $100,000 a minute, and then turning him into like a robot.
It was like having a robot essentially act as a stand-in or something for the rest of the time. I like from Jodorowsky and the team's perspective, I get it, because it's like you want to get this all-star team lined up and whatever, get it all fully storyboarded or at least have a very good idea. And in their mind, they're like, well, if we have all this done, like this, whatever studio we go to might see this and be like, hey, that sounds great. Like you have all these people and everything, like this could make us money. But you also run the risk doing that you will put all this time and effort into this, and then it's just not going to happen, which is exactly what happened here. They're $5 million short of their $15 million budget they wanted.
Yeah.
So
but that's a lot of money for the 1970s too,
Yeah.
for a movie. I mean, he did have that one producer on board.
Yeah.
But that producer didn't have enough pull. But it's like very similar to like the prep that went into the Lord of the Rings trilogy, except New Line backed that from the beginning and said like, okay, you're doing it. Whereas this was very much, oh, let's just do the whole thing and then try to get more money. Yeah.
Yeah. No. What was I trying to think about this? One of the things I think this documentary does really well is gives you context for him as a filmmaker towards the beginning, because you see kind of his 3 movies that he made before this, and they are very strange movies.
Extremely strange.
I've heard of both El Topo and The Holy Mountain before. The one before that I'd never heard of, but The Holy Mountain I've heard is very good, but it is just an incredibly strange movie. And visually it looks very impressive, especially because I think that was made like early 70s and everything. I'd be interested in checking it out at some point, but very weird, very like most like shrouded in symbolism kind of movie.
Yeah.
But he's also someone that acts in all of his movies too, and that's very, very interesting. But yeah, I think that gives you a good context as to what this could have been. And this movie seems more like it very strange still, but more straightforward than those movies. Still, like it actually has like a very complex but sequence of events that happens. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, Jodorowsky just seems like a character because he's all about like making art, and he's, according to him, he had not even read Dune. He's like, oh, I want to make Dune because my friend said it was good.
Yeah,
and I can make anything. So I don't know. I don't know what to believe anything that guy says. But
he's very entertaining.
He is. He's got an energy, an aura to him that's kind of just pulls you in.
Well, and I think that's also very good that that's presented that well in the documentary, because I mean, you have all these people that talk about their meetings with him, or he'll even recount his own meetings, and like lots of times they like start out poorly or like very strangely, but he just kind of draws them in for whatever reason. They kind of become enamored with his whole vibe, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Yes. Talks about raping Frank Herbert.
He does do that. Yeah.
That is such an uncomfortable thing to hear and describe.
Yeah. Very awkward.
Very much South Park.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg.
That's
and George
true.
Lucas.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I just am like, that was a very old person thing to say.
That by far the most out of left field thing he says in the documentary. I feel like the rest of it is just kind of like weird old man ramblings, but yeah, that one's very.
You don't want to say that, man.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, this guy.
He wanted to put his son as Paul.
Yeah, and he like put his son through a lot.
Yeah.
Sounds like it really damaged their relationship.
Yeah, I'm kind of more. I'm interested to learn more about them. I don't know if there's a lot to tell or whatever, but. Puts his son through so much just to be Paul, like all this vigorous martial arts exercise and whatnot.
I feel like this documentary didn't go that in depth into anything. I do think it's very superficial across like, oh, here's some ideas. But this is also at a time when Dune wasn't as popular, like it was, it's like they almost like explain parts of Dune, but they don't really explain that much. It's like they were too afraid to dive like actually into his adaptation and the story and the way he was taking it. They have hints of it and like general overarching things, and I guess that was just to make it for a wider audience.
Yeah, I definitely think if they were to make this same movie today, they'd be able to go a bit more in depth with like the plot and whatnot, and that like like designs and whatever. And they do show off a lot of that, and it's very interesting, but. I definitely think with how Dune is kind of widening in popularity, you could dig a little deeper in that regard.
He's still alive. He's 95.
He is, yeah.
Jodorowsky.
When I was watching this with both my parents, and my mom was like, "There's no way this man's still alive," because I think they might have even said his age in the documentary at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
95,
still kicking.
still kicking.
Yeah, I think it was interesting how he's open to it. Like someone can just take it and make it.
Yeah,
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had heard of El Topo and Howling Mountain before, but I wasn't really familiar with anything he did after. And so I was kind of wondering if like this movie like completely burned him out on just filmmaking and whatever.
Me. He makes
Yeah.
the claim that he didn't, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
He only made like a couple movies and then he took like a 20-year break until the documentary says that he was in talks with after reconnecting with that producer of making a movie, and they did make it. I think he's made 2 movies since this documentary came out. But yeah, this would take a lot out of me. Pink Floyd was going to do the soundtrack, which
For the Atreides, anyway.
yeah, for the Atreides, which as a big Pink Floyd fan, I was very excited to hear that. I would have died for that. That'd be so cool. Pink Floyd did soundtracks for a couple other movies in the 60s, so that would have been on brand with them. Would have been interesting. I liked his story of talking to Pink Floyd, where he's like getting angry about them eating hamburgers.
Yeah.
You remember that? I just thought that was so bizarre. But then they stopped and listened to him, and he gets this other like European band to do the Harkonnen music, which I'd never heard of that band. But that was interesting. The creative team he gets is very interesting. Dan O'Brien, or is that his name? Dan O'Brien? Dan O'Bannon. He wrote Alien and did some special effects. He was hired for the special effects for this movie. But I thought it was fun because he became aware of Dan O'Bannon because of John Carpenter's first like student film, Dark Star, which I've heard of. I've never seen it, but I've heard that's a movie that some people credit as like a very early also inspiration for like Alien and stuff. So that was kind of interesting to hear about that. But then you have H.R. Giger, which I always thought it was Geiger, but they say Giger in the...
I'd never heard him talk before.
Yeah, no.
It's interesting.
They got him, Chris Foss, a bunch of other people on the creative team, and it was cool to see all of their various designs. I liked the concept art of I don't remember who it was that drew the ships that they like fish and and a lot of them also looked like insects too.
Yeah.
Played a lot into
the spice was like white.
Yeah, the spice was white. Well, I think, and one of them says that like all the ships are like living, like literally, or like some of them are. Like I think the ornithopters at least were like living creatures or something. It's like bizarre.
I don't remember that. But it was like clearly that Jodorowsky's like, I want people to feel like they're on LSD watching this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
The experience of taking
that's what it
LSD
looks
without
like.
taking it. Yeah. That was very cool. I mean, it's like from the modern perspective, you'd never get this movie made today, like just straight up. It just wouldn't happen. But like you think back then, and like Jaws hadn't even come out, right? Like this was like pre the blockbuster, big blockbuster.
But would people have wanted to see this? I don't think this was ever going to work.
I don't think so. But what I just think is interesting about the concept is it's like this is such a big like swing. Like, I mean, I don't think you could necessarily make the argument that Jaws is similar in that way. But Jaws was also like first of its kind of summer blockbuster movie, and that kind of changed movies as we know it. Through series of other things, but I don't know. This is just like it's another movie that's something like they hadn't seen before at the time, and we haven't seen now. So like if it had gotten funded, like just how different would things be?
Which they bring that question up, like what would it look like to have movies today? I feel like if this was made, we would not get Denis Villeneuve's Dune.
Probably not.
And I'm okay having Denis Villeneuve over this one. This one would be very interesting to see, but I don't think I would like it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like his older movies are so bizarre and conceptual. This one, it's just like this one is also so bizarre, but I mean, I don't know, just like taking its time with everything and introducing all of these new strange plot points could be very interesting for me. I'd be interested. I would be interested.
Skeptical. I would love to see the book.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
like to flip through the book. Make it a PDF online.
Yeah, no, I would hope that at some point they'd publish the actual book as, I mean, whether it be a physical book or an ebook or something, somehow get it out there. That'd be really cool. Really interesting. I do think we should, I want to mention a little bit about the whole like Salvador Dali thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Conversation. Because that's just so interesting. I mean, Salvador Dali, well known, especially for paintings nowadays. That's mostly what I know him from, but is fairly big in the art scene. And when they like kind of describe him in this documentary, he seems just very like akin to Jodorowsky in a lot of ways, like birds of a feather in a way.
Like talks in the third person, like Salvador Dali doesn't even understand Salvador Dali. Salvador Dali only speaks in enigma.
Yeah.
You know, like, who is like when Jodorowsky's like, who is this weird guy? Like that's when you know like this guy's off his rocker.
Just so strange. And it's fun. Like the idea of getting him as the emperor, just in terms of like history, is so strange. Because I don't know if Dali did a lot of acting or anything. So it's like just the idea of getting him to do a role like that is bizarre. But then him wanting to be the highest paid actor of Hollywood just because. And like the whole description of him like just essentially messing around just for the sake of messing around.
I want a burning giraffe. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think his muse or whatever describes him as like just dismantling a movie for the sake of dismantling a movie. Just a bizarre, maybe insane individual, who knows, but very, I don't know, just interesting. And then they decided they didn't want him to be paid $100,000 an hour or whatever, but that whole thing about him being paid per minute and only being in the movie for 3, maybe 5 minutes or whatever.
Of a 14-hour movie.
Yeah, which especially like you think in context of like the Denis Villeneuve Dune movies or the David Lynch one, the ratio for how much the Emperor would theoretically be in this long movie. 5 minutes doesn't seem like very much.
Well, that's not including the robot.
That's true. Yeah. I guess
the robot that's
you can't
there
discount the
because
robot.
he's too afraid to get assassinated or something.
Which I guess like it, that's a fun enough workaround so you don't have to pay Salvador Dali for.
It's a plankton move. Put the brain in the robot.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I really liked that. And then the Orson Welles conversation of hiring that chef for like. And that's where we get to about like going back to the whole conversation about like getting this movie together without having the funding. He's just throwing this money around, like the promise of this money without having it set in stone.
I like how he goes after Orson Welles because he's a big fat gluttonous blob, disgusting. He's perfect for the Baron. What do you
Doesn't
think of
say
when
that for words, but yeah, basically.
But he's like, oh, what do you think of when you think of this? Orson Welles, obviously.
There's a really funny edit in this movie where it's like it's the concept art of the Baron, and then it just fades to Orson Welles and this like big.
He was a big man,
big Orson Welles. Very very funny that. What else?
I think that I've talked about everything I wanted to talk about.
I'm trying to think if there's anything like big I've missed. My parents quite enjoyed this. They thought it was very funny. They really enjoyed Jodorowsky as just a character, which I think that's one of the reasons why this documentary is very well regarded, is because it's just very watchable with like him just as a person. Very interesting subject.
Yeah, I don't know if I would really be all that interested though if I didn't care about Dune.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know.
Like if you didn't care about Dune, I don't think you would get any entertainment out of this. Really,
that's true. I guess I don't know how like wide, before like especially the new Dune movies, how wide this was appreciated. But it's a movie that, like, from what I understand, has very positive reviews and everything. I assume most of those people just are Dune fans themselves. So, yeah. I don't know.
Because why else would you be watching this?
Yeah.
Or a big fan of like filmmaking.
Yeah. Which I guess that goes with a lot of documentaries, right? Like I feel like a lot of especially weird ones like this, you might not necessarily get into unless you already have a vested interest in that subject. But yeah, I will say one last thing. His whole story of going to see David Lynch's Dune was pretty funny. Yeah. And saying he thought it was horrible. Even though I don't think it's like that bad, but it was just kind of funny. He had a lot of respect for David Lynch, which makes sense. I could see that being mutual respect, maybe.
And he says it's not Lynch's fault. He's like, the studio destroyed this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's Jodorowsky's Dune. Do you want to give it a rating?
Yeah, I'll give it a rating. I'll give it I'm like at a 7.5.
Oh, I was really hoping you were going to say 7.5.
I was thinking about it. I was like, I think this one's a lot easier for me to rate because I think it's solid in a lot of ways. But it is, they could go more in depth. There could be more dissenting opinions. I feel like there's some depth within the documentary itself that they don't explore, but very informative, I'll say. Interesting to hear this concept.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Holden, let's go on to the final segment of the show, which of course is, what are you doing?
What are you doing? What are you doing? No, what are you doing? What are you doing? No, what are you doing? What are you doing?
All right. So this week, Jimmy, I watched a lot of movies actually. First off, I rewatched La La Land.
And how was it this time?
Still a perfect movie.
I haven't seen it in like 5 years actually.
Oh, you need to do that. Mm-hmm. I feel like I end up watching it about once a year, but I think it had actually been close to 2 years since I saw it last. Still fantastic. Still probably my favorite movie. So anyway, my brother needed to watch some World War II movies for his class. I think it was actually for extra credit, but he was like, "Hey, Holden, you're going to be in town this weekend, so you just want to watch some?" I was like, "Okay." And he had this list that I could choose from.
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List was on the list. But I had this one movie called The Cranes Are Flying. It's a Russian movie from the 50s. It's a Criterion movie. I had bought several years ago. I had heard it's incredible, mostly because like the cinematography I've heard is like it really ahead of its time. And I knew it was World War II, and I just had never gotten around to watching it. So I was like, would your teacher be cool with this?
The cinematography of this 1950s post-war Soviet movie from the Criterion Collection is so far out of its time.
Yeah, it was. Good summary there. It was really good though. It was fantastic. It was one of the things that I had seen pointed out online about it was like, despite it being a Soviet post-war movie, there was not a lot of propaganda in it. It was mostly it was like kind of this love story about this couple torn apart by war, which, is a story you've kind of heard many times, but is done in a very interesting way. The cinematography is incredible. I don't know how they would have done it in the 50s. A lot of the camera work is very, very impressive, I think.
Like long
A lot of long takes. A lot of just like one of the common things that happens in this movie, there's a lot of like people shoving through crowds and a lot of long takes of shoving people through crowds. I don't know exactly how they arranged that all, but it seems very modern in how it's done. But it was like one of the other reasons I was like, it was on my radar. It's like on Letterboxd, like the 50th highest rated movie of all time or something like that. So very well regarded. I would recommend it. I don't think it's, you hear a war movie from 50s Russia, you might get a pretentious idea in your head. I don't think it is at all. I mean, it's subtitled obviously, but I think it's pretty straightforward in a lot of ways. Pretty optimistic for a war movie too, I'd say, in ways I wasn't expecting. So I'd recommend it. Good movie. Also, it's only like 90 minutes, pretty short. The other one I watched was Letters from Iwo Jima. Have you seen that?
Nope, not.
It's very good. I was surprised by how nuanced and respectful it was. I guess like Clint Eastwood directed it. And it's a movie told entirely from the Japanese perspective of Iwo Jima. And I mean, I don't think Clint Eastwood is a bad person or anything, but I think he's very tied to like just very like American like ideals, maybe just because he's like, attached to Westerns or whatever. I feel like a lot of people have that idea of him at least. But no, this was like a very respectful, interesting, like look at war. I think Ken Watanabe is like the lead in it.
Cool.
And he was incredible. Or one of the leads. He was this general character. I did not know a lot about the Battle of Iwo Jima prior to this. So it was very interesting learning that it was just I knew it was like they lost, but it was just a horrible failure on all accounts, basically. Like it was just, they knew that they were going to lose. They knew it was like, why are we defending this crappy rock, essentially, kind of thing. But I liked all
from
the
the
characters.
Japanese perspective.
From the Japanese perspective, yes. Apparently there's like a sister movie to it called Flags of Our Fathers.
I knew they were related.
Yeah. I've heard that's good. Not quite
Is that
as
the
good.
American perspective? Then?
Yeah. Yeah. So I might watch that at some point. But I really liked it. The only thing I will say is like color grading wise, very mid 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of ugly looking. I think it's still visually impressive in a lot of ways. Not a very big budget, but there's a couple shots of like US bombers like coming in, and I'm sure that's CG or whatever, but there's just like hundreds of them coming in. It is terrifying, just them coming in from a ways away. But very good. I'd recommend it. And then the last big movie I watched, I went and saw Late Night with the Devil, Jimmy.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. My mom wanted to see it. If we want to do it for the podcast, I'd rewatch it. It was good. I liked it a lot. The presentation is like kind of the big draw with it, and it is very interesting. I think it has a lot of comedy to it. There's some very funny moments. David Malkian, I think is how you say his name.
David Dalmatian.
He's a very good lead. I'd like to see him as the lead in more things. I wouldn't say it's a slow burn because it's very entertaining, but I wouldn't say that it takes quite a while for the horror stuff to get going. And the last 10 minutes is when it gets really crazy, and that stuff is really good. But interesting presentation wise, this movie has like 9 production company logos ahead of it.
Oh, wow.
It got to the point where the other people in the theater were like laughing at it. It felt like a bit.
The Family Guy bit?
Yeah. I saw that. I hadn't seen that Family Guy bit, but I saw that shared online. It felt very much like that. But very solid horror movie. Yeah. Meets the hype, I'd say. Otherwise, I started the last season of Reservation Dogs because I hadn't seen that yet. It's quite good. And just playing more Final Fantasy. I think I'm pretty close to the end, so we'll see if I finish it this week.
Still playing that?
I'm still playing it.
Whiz, how many hours have you put in that thing?
I think like 100.
That's how long that game is?
Well, no, I have been doing like all of the side stuff and like all of the extra stuff. So if you
still,
yeah, there's a lot of stuff to this game.
How long is the main story?
If you looked at like how long to beat, I think it's like 35.
Gee whiz.
It is long. It's like as
game.
long as the original game. And this is just the second third of it.
Oh my gosh.
But I really
is there
like
another
it.
third then?
Oh yeah.
I thought this was a 2 halves.
No, it's 3.
Oh my gosh.
There's one more coming.
It's a hockey game. 3 periods.
Well, and I'm interested because the part where this game is going to end is a very famous video game moment, and I think it's going to play out differently in this. So I'm curious to see.
I don't know anything.
Yeah,
so.
I'm not going to say anything in case you eventually get around to it. But yeah, other than that, Jimmy, what have you been doing?
Here I am playing Plague Tale Requiem. I'm like 15 hours in. I'm like, when is the end in sight? Gee whiz. Plague Tale Requiem is fine. I just don't like it as much as the first one.
Interesting.
I feel like I just think it's just so long-winded in everything that I'm like, this just could be half as long.
My biggest problem with it, and maybe you found this, is I feel like it shifts focus too much. I feel like especially towards the beginning, I really like the focus on like the main character just like brutally murdering people.
Yeah.
And how it affects her and everything. And I feel like it just kind of drops that at a point.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems all over the place. Yeah. And it's like, oh, I like this side character. And then they're just gone. Mm-hmm. Oh, I like this one. They're just gone.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's a character that like dies in the first one only to come back to just die. I
can't remember who that is.
It's just like
that sounds
like,
right.
okay, we already did this. I just think it's kind of I'm enjoying it enough, but I'm ready for it to be done. I'm like,
you're probably close to the end. I mean, 15 hours in, I'd say.
But I'd still like another 5 or 6. I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't really remember the first one all that much. I just remember liking it more than this. And I don't know if it also just like gives you all the stuff from the first one again, but I don't know. I just don't feel like it's as satisfying to do anything. So yeah, and again, I'm also just a person who doesn't like when games open up a ton, and this one opens up a ton. Yeah. And if you do it, I think it just needs to be like all that stuff needs to be really interesting, and I just don't think it's all that interesting. And I'm a person who likes to go and do all that stuff where I should just plow forward because I want to like, oh well, maybe there will be interesting stuff off to the side, and I think I just need to let that go and just finish this game.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with that. But that's gaming wise. But in terms of watching stuff, I have watched a couple things. I watched Train to Busan.
Oh wow,
which I really enjoyed.
Yeah,
I think that is like a perfect introductory foreign language film for an English speaker. I just think it's very entertaining. Most of it is just visual storytelling. It's just so easy to understand what's happening. And it's a fun zombie movie. I think it's the best zombie movie, honestly, that I've seen.
Yeah.
It's just like constantly entertaining. The characters, you like actually feel yourself rooting for them or rooting against certain characters. Just really good. Just from start to finish, it's like focused, lots of fun set pieces. Really good effects, really good effects. Like there's some like body horror things. I'm like, I don't know how they did that. Like these people will like when they turn into zombies, their body will like crinkle up and then they'll like be in zombie mode. And I'm like, I do not understand how they did that. I don't. I'm not sure if it's just like a person that's that flexible and can just do that. But good makeup and everything, honestly, just hits and all that stuff. From start to finish, and it gets going like immediately too. It's like 10 minutes, we're on the train, let's go.
Yeah,
it's also a train movie. The whole movie is a train sequence,
which you do love.
I do like train sequences.
It's one of my mom's favorite movies. I think it's her favorite zombie movie for sure, but yeah, she loves that.
I certainly like it more than like 28 Days Later.
Yeah,
I Am Legend.
I've never seen it.
Just think
I was trying to think of like zombie movies I've seen to see if because I've seen Train to Busan. I'm not like in love with it. I think it's very good, but I didn't like fall in love with it or anything. But I'm trying to think if there's one I like more. I don't know. Maybe not.
If you're like, I want to start watching foreign films, but I don't know. Like, I don't want to read subtitles. This is a good place to start.
Yeah.
And it will win you over. It's good. It's better than Holden Says It Is. Just like Godzilla.
I think it's good. It's just not my favorite movie.
And then I started rewatching House of the Dragon, so I watched the first episode today and forgot how violent that was. It's very violent. It's more violent than anything in the
first episode,
and than anything in Game of Thrones. I'm like, gee whiz! Forgot how bloody this was. Very good though. Really enjoyed that first episode. Excited to rewatch it all. I've been humming Game of Thrones music all day now.
Nice.
I'm excited. I love Game of Thrones. House of the Dragon season 2 just a couple months away. Can't wait to review it. But that's what I got, Holden.
Sweet. All right. Well, next week we got Monkey Man.
Yes.
Very excited.
It's monkey time. We got this.
Yeah.
We got
Godzilla versus Kong.
Godzilla versus Kong. We got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes coming up.
Big monkey year.
Watch all those movies. Are those streaming on anything?
I don't know. Yeah, you do got to do that.
The Apes movies.
Make sure it's just the new ones.
Planet of the Apes.
Hulu?
Hulu. Oh,
Actually, that would make sense if they're all on Hulu.
And they'll all have ads for me. This one's not on Hulu. War for the Planet of the Apes.
About Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
What about Dawn?
You don't need the Mark Wahlberg one.
Dawn of the Planet. That's on Max. What is happening?
Well, at least you'll only have to maybe pay for one of them.
The Mark Wahlberg one, is that the...
Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. There we go. Well, that's coming at you later on.
Monkey Man next week. If you want to leave us a request, you can do so by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes or email us at tompodcast@gmail.com or donate to our Patreon.
There we go. All right. Until next time. Adios, bandelones.
Love you.